Inflation is hitting hard, and it's affecting our ability to afford even the basic necessities. Prices are rising, and it's leaving many of us feeling like we can't keep up. But what exactly is causing this trend, and when can we expect some relief? Join us in this video as we delve into the issue of inflation, its root causes, and what the future might hold. Inflation means that the value of money is decreasing and prices are going up. We've all experienced it in some way. It goes without saying that everything is more expensive than it used to be, from groceries and petrol to plane tickets and rent, and many Americans are left wondering when pricing will return to normal. When will the inflation rate begin to decline? The short answer is that there are several factors, like post-pandemic consumer demand, persistent supply chain shortages, geopolitical developments, and the war in Ukraine that influence today's record high inflation. And there are differing opinions on how most of these elements will develop. When do you believe prices will stabilize? Consumers are eager to spend their money once more as the world begins to recover from the pandemic. Prices have risen as a result of greater demand for products and services as more money competes with scarce resources. Inflation has been influenced by the pandemic's impact on the supply chain. There has been a lack of supplies due to factory closures and shipment delays. Because of this, businesses are having trouble obtaining the inputs they require, and when they do, they can end up paying more. Consumers are affected by this through rising prices. The ongoing crisis in Ukraine is a contributing factor to economic instability. The resulted disruption of the supply chains and higher expenses for firms, which were then passed on to customers. Governments all across the world have also started stimulus initiatives to help people and companies in reaction to the outbreak. While these initiatives can support economic growth, if they're not carefully controlled, they may also result in increased inflation. But because of the government's stimulus expenditure, there's now more money in circulation, which increases demand for products and services and raises prices. According to new research, 57% of Americans are unable to pay a $1,000 emergency bill. An analysis of why Americans are saving less and suggestions for increasing your emergency fund, having a safety net in place to catch you when you fall, can help you lessen the financial impact of unforeseen bills. American emergency funds, meanwhile, are suffering in a faltering economy. 68% of Americans are concerned that if they lost their main source of income, they wouldn't be able to pay their living expenses for even 1 month, according to Bankrate's annual emergency fund report. When analysed by generation, millennials, 79%, and Gen Zers, 85%, are more likely to be concerned about paying for an unexpected bill among the majority of US individuals, 57%, currently unable to cover a $1,000 emergency bill. This brings us to the question of how? So how do Americans pay for emergencies? Well, they're using their credit cards more frequently. According to the study, 25% of consumers said they would use their credit cards to cover a $1,000 emergency bill and pay it off over time, which is a record number since polling began in 2014. Why does this matter? Because two of the elements that have the greatest weight when determining your credit score are your payment history and the amount you owe. Additionally, with credit card interest rates at all-time highs, carrying a load from month to month might cost you a fortune in interest over time and could damage your credit rating if you can't make the payments. Their timing couldn't be worse, given that 1 in 4 Americans told us they would use a credit card to pay for a significant emergency bill, claims Mark Hamrick, senior economic analyst at Bankrate. The average interest rates on credit cards are the highest we've ever seen, and they're expected to rise further as the Federal Reserve keeps raising rates. In the ideal case scenario, this debt should be settled before expensive interest rate charges are applied to the account. Early in January 2023, there was a significant break in the clouds as the Consumer Price Index increased by only 6.5% for the year ending in December, as opposed to 7.1% for the year ending in November 2022. Inflation may be changing course as a result of this moderate slowdown in price increases, but consumers are not yet in the clear. But when will it end is a huge query on everyone's mind. Unfortunately, there isn't a simple solution. Interest rates will likely remain high for the foreseeable future as a result of the ongoing inflation. Although some industry professionals think that the supply chain problems will eventually get better on their own, others feel that we may have to cope with inflation for years. To reduce inflation, which has a long way to go and is likely to be bumpy, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell stated to Congress on Tuesday, the central bank will likely continue to raise interest rates in the coming months. The ultimate level of interest rates is likely to be higher than previously expected, Powell said, delivering the Fed's semi-annual monetary policy report to the Senate's Banking Committee. My co-workers and I are well aware that rising inflation is causing substantial suffering, and we are steadfastly committed to getting inflation back to our target of 2%. We haven't fully experienced the results of our tightening until now. We still need to do more work, he added. We will probably need to keep our monetary policy restrictive for a while to restore price stability. Interest rates are currently between 4.5 to 4.75% after the Fed raised them in February by a quarter point, which was the smallest increase since it began hiking rates from zero last March. The Federal Reserve Board will announce any further interest rate rises during its upcoming meeting on March 21st and 22nd. Even though inflation has decreased by more than 3% since its peak last summer, Powell said he is still committed to bringing it down to 2%. The inflation rate in January was 6.4%. Powell cited January's economic data, which revealed significant increases in consumer expenditure and employment, as evidence that the inflationary pressures that had been weakening had slowed. According to Powell, some of the softening's reversal could be related to the unseasonably warm weather in January across the nation, but it also demonstrates that inflation pressures are still more intense than anticipated. While some supply chain constraints have eased and core goods and housing services inflation has shown some indications of moderating, other core services still require further price stability. The labour market would certainly weaken a bit, he said, but nominal pay growth has been higher than what is consistent with 2% and the present productivity trends. The January jobs report, which was released last month, revealed that the labour market expanded by more than twice as much as economists had predicted, and that the unemployment rate, which is now at a 53-year low of 3.4%, just slightly increased. High pay growth benefits employees, but only if it isn't undermined by inflation, he added. Without price stability, the economy does not function for anyone in particular. We won't be able to maintain favourable labour market conditions for an extended period. Powell underscored the Fed's dual purpose of maximising employment and stabilising prices, warning against premature policy easing because of past experience. He declared, "We'll keep going until the task is finished." The economy can be significantly impacted by rising interest rates, which can have an impact on everything from consumer purchasing to business investment. When interest rates increase, borrowing becomes more expensive, which can lead to consumer spending reductions and business investment plans being scaled back. The ability to save might be aided or hindered by rising interest rates. On the one hand, a rise in the federal funds rate increases the cost of borrowing, which increases the expense of carrying debt. For instance, the majority of credit cards have variable annual percentage rates, APRs, which means that they might alter depending on changes in the federal funds rate. Any interest fees you pay for carrying a balance will also go up when your APR does, which can make it more difficult to pay off your debt. Rates rise along with borrowing costs, which can cause businesses to make less money and stock prices to fall. This may cause investor apprehension and a sell-off in the financial markets. Not just debt is affected by rising interest rates. In many situations, saving rates will also rise, making this a good opportunity to open a high-yield savings account or CD and deposit your money there to raise your balance. Both good and negative effects on the economy may result from rising interest rates. Although they can support long-term economic stability and assist to contain inflation, they can also result in reduced levels of consumer and company spending, which could potentially slow down economic growth. To ensure that they foster long-term economic growth while averting damaging economic downturns, policymakers must carefully regulate interest rates. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the issue of inflation. As we've seen, rising prices and reduced purchasing power can be a major concern for individuals and businesses alike. What are some steps you plan to take to protect yourself or your business from inflation? Have you come up with any creative solutions to stay ahead of rising prices? Let us know in the comments section. As always, thank you for watching and be sure to like, comment and subscribe for more great content.